Today, we are going to talk about interconnectology inspiring a paradigm shift. And what I really want to talk about first a little bit is some terminology. Now, advanced packaging, we're all familiar with. When I first was interviewed for Advanced Packaging magazine about 8 years ago, if you had asked me when I went in for my interview what advanced packaging looked like, this is what I would have shown you. And you know, it's an honest mistake because I don't know if you've ever Googled the words advanced packaging, but when you Google advanced packaging, this is what comes up. What we like to suggest is that we're really not talking about advanced packaging as the value add, but the advanced interconnect. And when you go and Google advanced interconnect, this is what comes up. So we're suggesting that instead of focusing on advanced packaging, we should be focusing on the advanced interconnect and looking at it as a system level approach. To demonstrate this to you on a more basic level, and I'm not an engineer, so when I like to think on a much more basic level, you know, we have the very simple peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So there you go. You got your peanut butter and jelly sandwich, okay? Or what if the peanut butter guys, the bread guys, and the jelly guys all started working together? Put efficiencies into the whole process, come up with an optimized product, and I give you the Uncrustable. So just to recap, the supply chain approach, which we all know, is you take the bread, you take the jelly, you take the peanut butter, and you get a product that is low cost, gets the job done. Now, if we implement interconnectology, you're going to integrate the jelly, the peanut butter, and the bread into one system, and you're going to get an Uncrustable. It's an optimized product, it's efficient, there's value add. Parents take it out of their freezer, throw it in their kid's lunchbox. And so that's, on a very basic level, this is the concept of interconnectology. What we're going to talk about today with our guests is how to implement this idea to the semiconductor supply chain, or as we like to think of it, the value chain. And Scott describes himself on his LinkedIn page as an interconnectologist. So how did you come up with that? Why that?
When I was first graduated from college, I went to work for a semiconductor integrated device manufacturer, Mitsubishi Semiconductor. So the best engineers they would put in the fab process, and then the next group, maybe dear to this group, would be the test engineers. And then the third, but not last group, would become the packaging engineers. And it said on LinkedIn, you should, unless you're a CEO, you should write what you do, not your job title. So I was getting ready to write packaging engineer. And then I thought about it, and I thought, well, the people who don't know the semiconductor industry won't have any idea what that is. They'll think it's the stuff that Françoise showed, you know, boxes and bubble wrap. And then the people that do know the industry will think it's that third group from my initial activity at Mitsubishi. And so I didn't like either of those, so I didn't write down either of them. 2 days later, I was going through my old family photos. And it was when I lived here in Phoenix, and it was at the Science Museum here. They had a traveling science display about the digestive system for kids. And it was called Grossology. When I saw that picture and I remembered the title Grossology, it all came together at that time, and I decided that I would become an interconnectologist. The problem is that the terminology and the way that we look at the industry hasn't changed, and so I think that I applaud what you guys are doing in terms of trying to create an environment where people where the terminology brings to mind what's actually going on in the industry.
So, Sitaram, from your perspective, how would you define interconnectology?
It's very similar to one of the definitions you had up there. It's the science of interconnect. I started, in the industry, it was the front end. And then you had local interconnects, you had the next level of interconnects, and if you were in the front end, it stopped there, you threw it over the wall to the packaging side, typically. It's changed a lot now, doing TSVs, all of a sudden you have a lot of respect for the packaging side, and it's much more complicated. So it's the whole science of interconnects, whether it's at the device level or all the way up to the board level. And you just have to take into account all the factors that give you reliability, cost savings, performance benefits, functionality, what have you. So that's bringing it all together. That's interconnectology to me. So
Why transforming electronic interconnect and not transforming advanced packaging?
When we think of advanced packaging, we often think of wire bond and flip chip interconnect. And what we really saw as the potential for our technology was to go all the way from board level interconnect to some extent and up into wafer level processing for ICs. And secondly, we think that electronic interconnect is a little bit more accessible, as Scott mentioned, to people outside of our trade. So within the trade, does it really matter if you talk about interconnect or packaging? Maybe not. We all kind of understand it. But external to our trade, it's a little bit easier to communicate our value proposition and what we're doing using words like electronic interconnect.
Great. Okay, thank you. So we talked about some technical reasons about interconnectology, but what are the real market drivers?
What's happening is in the old days, IBM first developed the original PC architecture, and as part of that, they developed and controlled the form factor for all the circuitry and devices in it. Now that we're in a post-PC era where people are trying to differentiate their products, now they need different ICs and different interconnect to be part of their solution to hit their value proposition. Where it really gets interesting is, 3D, a lot of people were talking about like the hybrid memory cube where you have a application processor or a memory controller with a memory stack for more efficiency in the memory architecture. There's applications like Xilinx's Vertex with a heterogeneous integration where for optical interconnect, they actually mix technology nodes.
Does interconnectology replace advanced packaging, or is it just a new area to focus on?
The importance of this concept and why it's something that goes beyond just nomenclature, it has to do with kind of the next 5 to 10 years of the semiconductor industry. I think the opportunity that interconnectology, or that the next generation of interconnect creates, is for those companies to bring together, to integrate multiple IP, multiple process technologies, to create products that are more competitive than some of these guys that are really starting to pull away from the rest of the industry.
the packaging end is more fragmented. So that's a ripe space for trying to grab some differentiation, if you will. But you can't just do it by coming up with the next clever package. It's got to be this more holistic approach that says, here is what I'm offering you from an interconnect point of view. But oh, by the way, this is how it interacts down the chain and up the chain. And if you can do that, I think then you've got a shot at clearing a space for yourself.
The term interconnectology is powerful. I remember when Scott changed his profile on LinkedIn and said interconnectology, I was really excited. I thought, wow, somebody really figured out how to communicate what it is we do. And what an interconnectologist really needs to be able to do is understand the electrical, thermal, thermomechanical, all the constraints that factor into designing a product involving electronic interconnect. So it's much more powerful, I think, than advanced packaging technologist, right? And it's just more fun to say as well. So,
I'm reminded of the phrase, a rose is a rose by any other name. So for the audience here, how does coining a new term change what happens?
I think really the interconnectology is you can't just do thermal engineering or test engineering. It all needs to be interconnected. Looking across all the disciplines and all the areas to say how do we put the pieces from multiple places in the supply chain together in a way to deliver against the product requirements and the value that's needed.
One thing that worries me, if you look at this panel, is there's no spring chickens up here. The packaging industry. There's not a lot of young engineers entering packaging, and it's worrisome because we said, hey, an integral part of more than more is interconnect and interconnectology, which means that you need smart, young, creative people to continue to drive these new solutions. So, if nothing else, I think improving the name a little bit maybe makes it more accessible to new college grads.